This week, if you like tooling leather, if you like Ren fairs, if you like pirates, if you like pirate maps, this video is for you. Last week, y'all watched me make that pirate map. This week, we're all gonna make that one. It's not as difficult as you think. This is a beginner level project. We're gonna walk through it step by step. This week, we're gonna focus on tooling. Next week, we're gonna focus on coloring and aging. So y'all stick around, we're gonna have a lot of fun. Let's jump into it. Okay, so this is our pirate map. I don't know if you can see the sketch that's on there. I traced it in. This is 1 ounce leather. So anytime I've ever tried to carve 1 ounce leather, obviously it's a challenge, but one of the challenges that I've run into is trying to get a deep enough impression on the actual piece itself so you know where to carve. So one of the things I do is I go back and I trace in the pattern with a pencil. I've heard multiple things and multiple opinions on that. So some say that the carbon is going to dull your swivel knife blade. At the same time, I happen to know from watching videos of his that Don Gonzalez draws directly onto the leather itself. So, you know, there's kind of mixed reviews on that. I personally haven't seen any problem with it. You'll have to decide for yourself what you want to do. But, you know, me personally, when needed, I draw directly onto the leather itself. Now, like I said, this is 1 ounce leather. You don't have to go very deep here. In fact, you can't go very deep without cutting through it. I would like to point out that while I am getting very close to connecting the lines at all the different intersections, I'm not actually doing that, and that's very important. You've probably heard other people talk about it, but if you connect them, then there's the potential that the points can lift, especially on, you know, if it's on something like a wallet or a journal cover or something like that, something that gets a lot of use. You really want to be careful about connecting those points. Just get close, but don't actually connect them. This is one of the few parts of the map that's actually really important that you be precise. If we're on one of the other parts where it's an island or the landmass or something like that, obviously nobody's going to be looking at it and going, dude, you did your island wrong. It curves here and not there. But they're going to know pretty quickly if your compass rose is not round. If you come out looking like an egg or something like that, it's going to be pretty obvious. So this is one of the few areas on this particular project that you need to be careful about your precision. Just take your time, go slow, make sure you're not connecting the lines, and you should be fine. Just using the tip of the swivel knife here. Any deeper than that and I'm at risk of going through the actual leather itself. Now, as I'm carving the edge of the island in, I'm sticking as close as I can to it. Obviously, I want to be precise, but if I get off just a little bit, nobody's ever going to know. It's not a big deal. So this is one of those projects that you can really just kind of relax a little bit and enjoy the process, because you don't have to worry about whether or not it's perfect. So for me, I want my map to look like this was done by a pirate or somebody like that, sitting at their desk. You know, they're inside the ship in the dark part, and they're trying to write on this piece of leather as the ship's rocking back and forth. And if that's the case, we're not looking at a piece that looks like it came off of you know, the printing press. We're looking at something that's a lot more sloppy, a lot more hand done. So that's what I'm going for when I create my pirate map. So that gives you a lot of freedom on these letters, because it doesn't have to be perfect. Now you'll notice the S is backward. I did that on purpose. I can't imagine that the pirates back in the day were overly educated, so I would have to think that you would see a lot of that kind of stuff. So that's why the S is backward. You can correct it if that, you know, messes with your OCD, but that was something I wanted to throw in there just kind of as an extra touch. Now that's kind of a sharp corner right there. That's one, again, that we don't want to connect. We're going to put the islands in. We're going to put the pirate ship in. After that, we're going to put the river in. Other than that, we're not going to cut or carve anything into it. We're just going to add that with our different stamps. Later in the process, we're going to be giving this map more of a natural edge, like what you might expect from a piece of parchment or something like that. We're also going to weather it. So personally, I want mine to look like it's, you know, been through the war. If an old nasty pirate is handling this thing, you can imagine how dirty their hands would be, and eventually how dirty the map would be. And so we're going to weather this thing to look like it has been handled by some pretty nasty individuals. Go ahead and cut the rivers in. Now keep in mind, I'm not going to the point. I'm moving just in front of it so that it's not technically connected. I'm not being overly precious about hitting every curve in this river exactly. Again, if this was, you know, something that you would easily recognize inconsistencies and that type thing, you know, where somebody may have done it wrong, well, that would be a different story. But nobody's going to tell you that this imaginary river doesn't curve the way that you drew it. So after I do this one, I think I'm going to do one more map, at least one more. And I'd like your suggestions on what you think I should do. Should we do something real? Should we do maybe Middle Earth, you know, Lord of the Rings kind of thing? I'd like to do another one, maybe do a big one, and do a free pattern, and then that way you can do a nice big map with me and follow along. Question I'd have for you is, would you like it to be lightweight like a real map, or would you prefer it to be a little heavier weight leather so we can put some depth into it? So if you would, leave in the comment section below which map you think we should do next, and would you like a more realistic lightweight one or one that has more depth in the carving? So let me know in the comments what you think, and we'll go with whatever the group decides. So here I'm carving in the pirate ship. You'll see on the pattern that it's kind of a sunken pirate ship, or a sunken ship, I guess. I can't tell if it's a pirate ship. All right, I think we're ready to start beveling. Now we're simply going to bevel around the outside of the island and all the different small islands. Then we'll jump up here and do that. Do the compass rose. You'll notice that I'm using, if I can get it in there so you can see it, just a traditional checkered beveler. A lot of times I'll use a steep edge beveler, but with this one being so lightweight on the leather, I mean it's 1 ounce leather, you can't go very light, you can't go very steep because you'll punch through the leather. So we're just using a traditional checkered beveler. This is one of those things that you just kind of have to settle in and know that you're going to be here for a little while and just kind of enjoy the process. I found that the two things that you're going to do in carving and tooling that's going to take longer than anything else will either be drawing in the pattern itself or beveling, one of the two. And they're both very important that you get them accurate to get the look that you want. So don't be in a rush, don't hurry, just kind of settle in and do it right. So as I'm working my way through this, one of the things I'm doing, because I can't use a steep beveler like I normally would, is that I'm rocking the beveler up on its toe. So the front part of it, that front part that runs along the line, instead of it keeping it flat, if I can get in there so you can see me, instead of keeping it flat like that, I'm rocking it up on its toe so it gets a sharper edge on it. So a lot of times if I'm working with a student who's trying to learn how to bevel properly, you know, a lot of times we run into the issue where it looks real choppy. You get what I call chatter in there. And one of the things I tell them is to try to focus on making the maul move faster, twice as fast at least as the bevel itself. So if you watch, this hand's pop, 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 pop. But my bevel is just barely moving across there at a nice steady pace.
This is the hour, the darkest place, Dante's Inferno, the devil's maze. It's a good world.
Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and work our way around, finish beveling everything. At this point, we're not going to bevel the ship, but we are going to bevel the islands and the compass rose. One thing you'll hear people talk about when they're teaching leather is that it's important not to turn the leather any more than you have to. Now, I would agree with that. I do agree with that if you're talking about doing production work, if you're working on a very large piece or something like that. But for a smaller piece like this that's just for yourself, my personal opinion, I turn it as much as I need to because I feel like I lose more time trying to figure out how not to turn the piece than if I just did it. So on small pieces like this, I turn it as much as I need to. So you can see we've beveled everything with the exception of the compass rose. We're going to go through and bevel that, and then we'll jump to the next step. So we've got the star, or the rose in the middle done. Now we're going to go through and we're going to do the circles on the outside. We're not going to touch the letters just yet. We're going to do that with something else. So now we've got all the beveling done. What we're going to do now is we're going to jump over and start using our stylus. You may want to re-dampen your leather at this point. We need it to move easily. We don't want to have to force it. So I'm going to re-wet the leather. We're going to recase it, and then we're going to jump back in with our stylus. And I think I missed a spot right here on the beveling. I'm going to take care of that, and then we'll grab our stylus. All right, with this particular stylus, you can use any stylus that you want to use, but this one has a fine point on one end and a ball point on the other. We're going to start out with the fine point, and then as we open up the different things that we're working on, we may go to the ball point. All I'm doing is tracing down the cut line that we put in with our swivel knife. That's opening it up. It's not going to create a lot of depth or anything for us right now, but what it will do is it will give us more room so that when we antique this, the antique will settle down in there very easily, and it'll hold that antique and it'll stand out. And this is something you want to be patient with. You don't want to force it. The leather will open up as you work. You're just going to have to take your time and kind of allow the leather to do what it wants to do with a little bit of encouragement. If you find that it's not wanting to open up, you may want to go ahead and add a little bit more water to it. Case your leather a little bit more. With the proper moisture content, it will move fairly easily. And just like any other line that we're going to create, we want this line right here to taper out, not just stop dead. So kind of lift your, I'll over exaggerate it, you want to lift as you go out. Okay, now for now, the only other place that we're going to need to use this is down here on this the shipwreck, and we're going to do the same exact thing that we did before. We're just going to work our way through the different lines and open those up. We're not trying to create depth here. What we're trying to do is make it look like it was drawn in by some, pirate 200 years ago. This is also a technique that I use when I'm trying to do any kind of lettering, especially if it's very fine lettering that looks like it's supposed to look like it's handwritten in. I'll do this, cut it in with my swivel knife, come back with my stylus, open it up a little bit. If you've seen the eagle, this is exactly how I did some of the smaller lettering on there. So with that, that's done. We're going to jump up. We're going to do the same thing on the letters on the compass rose. If for some reason you don't have a stylus, a fine point pencil should work. Ordinarily, I wouldn't encourage you to use a pencil, but we're going to be antiquing this, so the lead, the graphite that ends up getting left on the piece is going to be covered up by antique anyway, so I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. Okay, so there we go. We've got that. Now we need to start adding some features onto the island. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the mountains. And one thing you need to consider when you're putting in mountains is you're creating low spots just like you are high spots in the topography. So with this, we want to give this river a reason to change direction. So we'll probably put some lower hills right in here, maybe some one of the bigger ones around here, and that way it makes sense why it would be changing directions. You can also bring it all the way up to the shoreline here. You can give it a rocky shoreline if you want to do that. But be methodical and think about why you're doing what you're doing and what it would have, what kind of effect it would have on everything as far as the paths, the roads, the ports, all that kind of thing. The more you do that, the more your map will make sense. At the same time, if you're just doing it to have fun, that stuff really doesn't matter. We're just, this is just a fun project. So as far as the mountains go, if I can get my tools here. So the one I use for the large mountains is a craft tool. It is a F926, it looks like. And if you can see, let me see if I can get the light over here so we can see it. There you go. It's triangle shaped. It's got some vertical lines on it. It's also concave at the bottom. It gives us a little bit of a unique print. If you don't have that, well, we can get creative. This one's just a triangle shaped beveler. See if you can see that. There we go. Triangle shaped beveler. This one is a F976. And these are mule's foot. You should have one of these, at least one of these in your kit. They're used for a variety of things. I have a, what is this? This one is a U851 and a Z-U, it looks like 853. So we're going to start with the big one first. And I don't have any real logic behind where I want my big ones and my little ones other than where is the river, where is the shoreline. So I always want my mountains pointing north for no other reason than it just mountains point up and we read the top of the map is up. So you may have to rock it. See, I had to rock it up on its toe to make sure that the entire mountain showed up. I can rock it to one side and create a lighter imprint and give a little bit different impression. So now we're starting to create something that looks a little bit more like a mountain range. Now let's see, and I just kind of go back and forth to see what I like. Some of this is just, play with it until you get it where you want it. So when I get down to the smaller mule's foots, I'm going to go very light and I'm going to fade them. They're going to be they're going to be heavier closer to the mountains, and the further away they get, they're going to be lighter. And I try to run them more or less in line with each other and create the effect of a hill or rolling hills. Up close to the river, obviously that's going to be one of the lower points on the map because water seeks the lowest point. So you're going to want to put some of these smaller hills right up against the river. Might switch over to my larger mule's foot just for a little bit, just to break it up, get some difference in there. Mountains tend to run in linear features. If you look at a map of like the Rockies, they run vertically. The ones that run through the southern portion of the United States, they run on a diagonal, but you don't really see them wander. The overall mountain range runs in a linear fashion. The heavier the imprint is, the bigger the mountain or the hill is going to read. So if you find that it's too light, you can always go back and add in a few more and darken it up. Just kind of get creative with this. It's hard to do it wrong. So every good pirate map has the path that you should take to try to get to the treasure, right? You don't want them going across the mountains or across the river. Take the easiest path to it. So that's what I'm going to put in next. I want to show you some of the different things that we can use. Let's see, let me wet this down real quick. With this, I'm not too worried about the moisture content or anything. I just want to be able to show you what the imprint looks like after we leave it, because with this particular one, all we're doing is marking a path. It doesn't have to be anything specific. So I'm going to use this one. This is a, what do I have here? An F120. It has a so that's the mark that F120 leaves. You can see it right there. That would work really well for leaving a path. Let's see what else we got here. This is the one I like. It leaves kind of a checkered rectangle. This is a matting tool, and it's let's see, what is this? It's a craft tool, and the number on it is an A889. See if I can get that up there so you can see it. Right there. What else do we have here? This is another matting tool. It's a smooth matting tool. It is an H967. Kind of looks like footprints. That one would work as well. And then last, this is a one of my favorite matting tools. This is actually a Berry King. It kind of has I'd say like a grass pattern or something like that on it. I would use this typically to mat the background down. This is one of the, it's like the smallest version of it, but it still gives you kind of a teardrop shape. And again, you could easily use that as your path of travel. I really like that one. It looks good on there. So let's jump over and add in the path that we want our pirates to take. It can be a little daunting to freehand anything into leather because once it's there, it's more or less permanent. So if you're nervous about that, you can always take your stylus and draw it in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have my guys start here. I'm going to bring them across. We'll make them cross a couple of rivers. I'm going to bring them down through there. We're going to put them right there. So the reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to put a city right there, like a port. So I'm going to have them start from the port, cross the two rivers, and go over there. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my, I'm using the rectangle. This is the, what is this? I think it says 889. It's either 889 or, yeah, that's 889, I believe. It's a matting tool. So I'm just going to space this out as evenly as I can. There's our path of travel that we want. Hopefully they're going to be taking the easiest route to get there. In this particular instance, I got them going over two rivers, which I kind of like that. to mark where the treasure's at, I don't want to do an X. You can do an X if you'd like to. I have this star tool, and I'm going to use that. This is, what's the number on it? It is a 054. It is a craft tool. So I'm just going to put my star right there. Give it a couple of good whacks, and that's where my treasure is going to be at. For my ports are almost always in a cove or a bay or something like that. They're protected from the wind, so you're never going to have them sitting out on a point, at least most of the time you don't. You're not going to have them way out here on the tips because that's going to catch the most amount of wind, the most amount of waves, so they're typically going to be in some kind of recessed area along the island. So I'm going to drop it in right here. You can put it out in the ocean if you want to, as far as where to mark it. I like marking mine on the land. I have just a simple cedar here. And this one is, let's see, it is a ZS706. Just a simple cedar. I'm going to drop it in right there. I'm going to give it a couple of whacks. I'm just going to put one little seed there. And that's going to be my city. Now I want to put some grassy areas in. This is the island, so obviously some of the lower areas here are going to have, different kind of grasses along the shoreline. I'm going to be using, what is this? This is a craft tool. It is F916, and this is something that I've seen in the Al Stolman books for doing, grass, low-lying grass, and that kind of thing. It works really well, and all you want to do is you want to start from the ones that are furthest away from the viewer and work your way down. We don't want super heavy impressions or anything like that. We just want to kind of we're just giving a little bit of a palm look, and I think I need some more water. So one thing that I did when I made the big map is I just hit it with water whenever, wherever. Ordinarily, I would wet the whole thing down. I would be very careful about that because I don't want water splotches showing up or anything like that. This is intended to be an ugly, well, not ugly, but old, heavily used pirate map. And I gotta think that there would be water stains, there would be oil, there would be grime, maybe even some, where they set a tankard down on it and they've got the ring on there. So I'm not overly worried about this project having water stains. I think it would actually work really well for the project. So I'm just gonna wet it down and not worry about it. Almost out of water. Okay, so make sure your grass is pointing north, just because that makes the most sense. And keep in mind, in this instance, we are not trying to create the illusion of grass. All we're doing is putting something on here that resembles grass, so that if somebody were looking at this, they would know, okay, the mountains are up here, the grassy lowlands are down here. That's all we're trying to do, so we're not being too precious about it. I'm going to take it up near the river, because it would make sense that the rivers would be more lush and they would have more grass around them, so I'm going to push it up near the river some. If you want to show grasslands that are more sparse, start spreading the stamps out and make them lighter. And you probably want to fade it as you get to the edges. That way it's not a real hard transition. So one of the things I like to mark on the maps that I do would be the reefs offshore. Just adds a lot more dimension to the overall area, gives your eye something else to land on. And so any of these points out here, I like to throw in random reefs, maybe between the islands or something like that. So that's what I'm going to do now. We are going to be using, what is this? Again, it's a craft tool. It's an E294. And this is a backgrounding or matting tool, more backgrounding than matting. And it just gives you a real irregular, almost like a rock effect. And I like using this one. I'll tip it up on its edge to get more of a crisp impression, and I'll just bounce it around like that, move it around, and that gives you a real random pattern, and I'll do that wherever I want there to be a reef. Again, you want to kind of think through where the reefs would most likely be. Makes a lot of sense that there would be a reef up here near these islands. So I'm going to put one up there. And a reef doesn't just end, it generally, fades out. So I'm going to do some lighter marking. That will show up in our antique, but it gives the illusion that, it doesn't just come to a dead stop. And I don't run it all the way around the coastline, but I do drop it in sporadically. Try to break it up as much as you can, gives it a more realistic look. Again, we're not going for photorealism here, but we do want the viewer to understand what they're looking at. Kind of see where we're going with that. All the way over here. I like putting the reef in between the islands. It makes a lot of sense that there would be rocks in shallow water there, so I like to do that. So hopefully it shows up on camera. We've got our pirate ship right here. Obviously, if it's wrecked, well, it's wrecked on a reef out in the middle of the water. So we're going to want to put a reef right there under it as well. And I'm probably going to tie it back into the island. So let's just kind of see how that works out. And these, I want these marks to be as deep as I can make them because they're sitting right up against that shipwreck. And hopefully you can see I'm putting the tool down, I'm leaning it different directions. That allows me to grab different parts of the tool here. I'm also rotating it, and that way I can get as much of a random pattern as possible. when you're doing this, you might think, man, that didn't show up nearly as much as I hoped it would. But when we put the antique on there, it's really going to jump off the page a lot more. We'll put some down here. That's it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about coloring and aging. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. I'll see you then.